Yeah, she was here. Okay. Oops. I think, Judy, this is good enough, what they can see on the screen, or does it need to be adjusted? Because I see that you can see the top lip, not below. So I'm not sure whether. Oh, yeah. Quite it. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's good. You know, one thing we say about Torah, we say, Hafot ba, the kula ba. You turn it around and turn it around, and everything is in it. Think of it, you know. I remember I used to teach in seminary here in Tzfat for Rabbi Weingart, and there were some girls that knew Rashi off by heart. And they'd say, so what's he going to do? We already know this. Well, we're going over the same thing ever again. Some people know Rashi off by heart. So what's the thing? So that's the whole thing. In other words, if we say that Hashem gives Torah all the time, that means it's always new. That means there's always something. I can read the same pasuk for my whole lifetime, and I'll always find something that I did not know, something new in that very pasuk. I remember lahavdil when I was at university for many years. I remember there were days people would ask me, so what happened at university? I say, nothing. But if a person's learning Torah, there's no such thing as that you didn't learn anything new, that there isn't such a thing does not exist. It may be not new to other people, but it's new to you. There's no such thing as something not new. If a person says something's not new, that means he hasn't been learning Torah. That's really what it means. That's really the bottom line. So, I understand that the topic chosen seems pretty amorphous, okay? I mean, if you're going to tell me, we'll all know, I don't know if there's one person in this room that does not know that Elul stands for the Rosh Tavis of Anila Doidili. You know, but the thing is, so what you going to tell me in that I don't already know? See? And I also think there's nobody in this room, at least most people in this room, know that it's also the time where we say Hamelech Basadi, the king is in the field. And this is what I chose to speak about. So maybe Rabbi will go home because we've heard this stuff, you see. We know. Okay. So, even though we say afternoon, in Hebrew they have a new expression, they say Tzorayim Tovim. It didn't exist when I came to Israel. No, there was only Boker Tov and Shalom and Erev Tov. There was no such thing as Tzorayim Tovim. Many words have been invented that never existed, like mitveh, what didn't exist. There's no chad mashma'it to say behechlet. These words did not exist. Things changed with time. Anyway, so even though you may not know what I'm going to talk about, I very much hope that I do. Okay? It'll be a good idea. Let me take out my glasses first. If people have heard, I know most of the ladies here heard me speak before, and I'm known to bring out things that people have never heard before. And that's one of my, Hashem has given me a gift to bring things out from what people think they know, bring something new from what people think they know already. Yeah. Okay, let's start there. We are in Elul. This process of like coming back to Hashem, which ends in the Yomim Noraim, for huge tzaddikim, it ends in Rosh Hashanah, because there's nothing to judge them about in Yom Kippur. But it's basically a whole mahalach of Tisha B'Av all the way until Yom Kippur. So that's why it's divided into two parts. Certain parts I'm going to speak about in the next time I speak. But I wanted to show, one thing I wanted to show is the ma'avar, the passage from, which begins with Tisha B'Av and goes all the way through Elul. And what I'm going to show is where Elul stands. Obviously, I'm not going to go all the way to Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It's not the time yet. I want to show where it shows what's its relevance in the whole mahala, in the whole journey, right, to getting back to Hashem. So we'll start off with what we say on Tisha B'Av. Very interesting thing we say. Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'noshuvo chadesh yomeinu kekedem. We all know that about Tisha B'Av. Okay, so let's put out a question. Why do we say Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'noshuvo? If I pull someone's arm towards me, isn't that person going to necessarily come my way? Obviously they are. So what is this? So it would appear, therefore, to say Hashivenu elecho Hashem v'nashuva, the nashuva seems totally redundant there. Because you're already pulling me towards you. What do you mean, bring me towards you and I will come back? But you're already here. So you see, that's what I'm talking about. Things that we say every single year, but we don't really think about what these things mean. We don't really necessarily look deeper. Okay, so that's gonna, huh? No, but he said but we are the ones that are saying Hashivenu. Hashivenu comes from us. Of course, we could resist. We could just not say it, but we do. That's the thing. That's the thing. We do say Hashivenu. Okay. Now, and obviously this is going to link up to Elul. Ani ledoidi v'doidi li. Okay, so the question can be asked. Why does it start off with us? Hashem loved us right from the beginning. Hashem even tells us that he chose us even before we chose him. So shouldn't it be that Hashem is our doidi and we are doidim to him in return of returning his love for us? Here it seems that we are the instigators. Ani ledoidi v'doidi li. Okay, these are points to ponder. I'm setting these things out because this is basically what the talk's going to be about. Okay. We started out with the Yomim Bein HaMeitzorim. So here we have to understand something about Elu. I said everything works in a sequence here. In other words, that the run-up to Elu starts from the word, the name from Bein HaMeitzorim. So, what is Bein HaMeitzorim? Bein HaMeitzorim means I find myself in dire straits, and I'm not talking about music now, right? I find myself in dire straits. What happens when a person finds himself in dire straits? Dire straits here means I can't move left, I can't move right, I can't move forward, I can't move back, I can't move up, I can't move down. I'm stuck. So you have to understand what the function of this very thing is. Why does Hashem have to put us into such a position of being unable to do anything? This is a very big thing in tshuva. It's just that some people chap it here, and some people have to actually go through dire straits, begashmias, to understand this one. So, Bein HaMeitzorim, I mean, you have to think of dvarim shebahoive, in other words, the things that the land of Israel is going through today. You understand that you have no friends, right? Anywhere you look, you're in trouble. You look right, balagan. You look left, balagan. You look in front, balagan. You look behind, balagan. So what are you going to do? You see that everywhere you go, there's no way to turn. And this is actually a part of what you may call siyata dishmaya. Hashem is putting you in a position to understand how things work. Kol zman that a person thinks that he has an exit point from an ace sorrow, from a difficult situation, he'll take it. Because I can go out here, I'm going. So Hashem says, fine. I was a bit cruel as a child, I would look sometimes at an ant. Ants work very hard. You see an ant schlepping its way, right? Schlepping something hard. What I would do, I would see the direction that the ant is going, and I'd put my hand there. And the ant is schlepping, dying, getting there. All of a sudden, I can't move. Now what am I going to do? Exactly, but Hashem has it in all directions. I couldn't have it in all directions. When you see that you have no place to move, it's a big bracha from the Eibishter. It's a big bracha. Because when people think that everything is hunky-dory, they feel, so what do I need to ask Hashem for help for? Because everything anyway is good. Everyone's healthy, Baruch Hashem, earn a good living, and there's peace at home. So who needs Hashem there? See? Okay. Bein HaMeitzorim means you're surrounded by all your enemies from all sides, like we have today, even in the political situation. And this is very good for Elu. So, what happens now in these straits is that there's a shift of focus. Like we know what happened on Shabbos, that Shabbos of Simchas Torah. There's some people that were put in such situations. is that they realized there was no one to speak to. And only then they said, I have Hashem. Some people realized only then that they can speak to a kadosh Baruch Hu. Before that, no, I can go there. I can do this. I don't need him. But when you're alone in a dark place and you hardly have food and you don't know what's going to happen today or tomorrow, even right now, you don't know. All of a sudden, your closest friend is a kadosh Baruch Hu. And all of a sudden, you start speaking to him, which is what Rav Nachman talks about. Speak to Hashem in your own language. Speak to him. Don't just wait. Oh, it's not yet mincha. I'll speak to him when mincha comes. Well, it's not yet Ma'ariv. I'll speak to him when Ma'ariv comes. No. I'll speak right now. In other words, when a person familiarizes themselves with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, they realize that they're in constant touch with him. And therefore, when a person realizes that, they realize that Hashem answers them all the time. And a person is living with the kadosh Baruch Hu. That's a very, very big thing. So these straits, I'm trying to say, serve a certain purpose to make a person be able to focus just on Hashem. Okay. So what it does then, there's a shift from worldly distractions. I'm not talking about things that are not kosher. That for sure no. But distractions of day-to-day life. Oh, I've got to do this. And yes, I have to pick up the groceries from this person because they're only going to be there until this time. And this, there's all this stuff, right? There's a shift when you come to Elul. There's a shift from worldly distractions to focusing on the ikr, the main thing, as a necessary step for what? What I haven't mentioned yet. As a necessary step for tshuva. If you don't focus on Hashem, who do you want to return to? So, people understand a Hasidic vote, and I think also Kabbalistic. Teshuvah is also Tashuv Hey. Hey comes back. Now, in the name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, I think my wife was actually here for one of these lectures. The last Hey is slightly out of focus there. It needs to be adjusted. So what happens is that down here, this is what Bechira does, you see. Bechira allows us to move certain things around, but not spoil the ikr. The ikr of Hashem is really the first two letters. And the Vav is the connector to the final Hey down here in our world. In fact, many Kabbalists explain, that's why when we say, what do they mean by that? I mean, Hashem's name will be Yud Kei Vav, Yud Kei, Yud Kei. What does that mean? In other words, that no body and no tumor and no bad deeds will be able to affect anything. We can affect things from Vav K, because Vav interacts with the Hey, which is us down here at the bottom. And when you put Ra into that equation, which I think most of these ladies know, you get what? Eva, right? Which Hashem does not like. So, what happens then, the kitzur, is that the Vav is really an extended Yud. So what happens is when that Vav brings its leg up, it's a Yud. What does that really help? It means that there is no longer any suckling, any more yenika of the clippers from Hashem's name, which means we've come to a point where there's no more bechira left. Right?
Wait, say that again?
No, in other words, we know Hashem's name is Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? The Kabbalists say, when we say, Vayomahu Yihye Hashem Echad Yishmu Echad, we're saying that his name will be Yihye. His name will be Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why? It's going to change his name? No. What it means is that the Vav, you see, as a long letter, it reaches down into the realm that we are in, into the realm of klippos, into the realm of tumah. And therefore what? It affects how the upper worlds can be mashpia onto us down here. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now let me take this off just to make sure I'm keeping track of the time. Okay. We'll shift from worldly distractions to focusing on the ikar as a necessary step to tshuva. There's another way that you can look at the words tshuva. And this is based on something that Hasidic writer called Be'er Maim Chaim. He also wrote a very, very interesting sefer, which I think it can be mechazik all Jews in Shmir Shabbos. It's called Shiro Shel Shabbos, 2 volumes. You know, when we talk about that Shabbos is the makor ha-bracha, is the source of bracha, we really mean it. In other words, a person that does not keep Shabbos basically goes into the next week without any bracha. How is he going to function? That's what it means. It says, if you don't prepare on Erev Shabbos, what are you going to have for Shabbos? What are you going to have? You don't have anything. Okay. So, Toshuv Hei Tshuva is also boishus. It's also boishus Vavke. It's also boishus. Meaning, boishus means shame, feeling ashamed. Busha. Okay? There's different types of busha. There's a busha because I know I've done something wrong. Right? And there's a holier type of busha, which is almost equivalent to Yiras Romus, that I understand, at least to what I can see, the greatness of Hashem. And therefore, I already want to conceal myself. This was a high madrega that Moshe Rabbeinu was zoicha to immediately, when he wanted to hide his face. He realized who he was dealing with here. So, the inyan of feeling busha before Kodesh Baruch Hu is part of the tshuva process, because a person understands that whatever they get, they do not deserve it. They don't. But Hashem will cloak it for you so that you don't feel the busha. But he'll only cloak it for you if you go according to his instruction. The Rambam says that the greatest pain of Gehenna is the feeling of shame. Of Gehenna is the feeling of shame.
Why do you assume that we don't deserve?
No. I'll say, okay, so you want an even deeper vault. The reason is that we don't deserve because the reason of not deserving, you have to understand, when you're talking about a Kodesh Baruch Hu, is that it's a built-in type of thing, because he is everything. He does not need anything. And therefore, there is no way, if you just look at it that way, there's no way that you can really deserve anything. You cannot deserve life. You cannot deserve heaven. There's no such thing. Hashem creates a situation of bechira that you do not feel the busha, like the Ramchal says, of receiving a free gift. Like if you know how this world works. We see it. Yeah, but let's face it.
You're not using the word deserve like you're a bad actor, you don't deserve.
No, not at all. No.
Like,
I'm not using it as a negative.
No.
No.
Because when you say you don't deserve it.
No. He didn't do anything wrong. It's just okay. I'll bring you. Oh no. It is a relevant term. I'll show you why. Because the same thing when you come back to the Bereshit story of Adam and Chava, they had everything good before the Chet. Did they deserve it? Exactly. But they did nothing to compromise their not deserving it. They did nothing to do that. But you can't say they deserved it, right? It's only after the Chet that they didn't become Roy. They were no longer Roy. They're no longer fitting. And Hashem took them out of the God. So the whole thing is, the derech of tshuva is to get you back to a situation of not you see, when you don't deserve, it's actually a flattery on the person that does not deserve, because he understands the greatness of Hashem even more. Because he understands that who he's dealing with, it's absolutely impossible to really deserve anything. I'll give you an example. A person feels, let's say, I don't know, he hears a nigger, and he feels the kedusha and the presence of Hashem intensely in that. For that split moment, he feels the kirva, the closeness of the Eibishter, and then it goes away, and then it's back. But you know what comes out of that moment? You realize, wow, I don't deserve anything. Anything that I do and anything that I go through does not even give me to deserve what I've already experienced. Sorry? I don't know about near-death experience.
Well, they would do the same way.
Maybe. But that's the vote. The vote is here. To understand deserving properly, you have to divide your mind into two parts. There's the part of knowing that there's only Hashem, and also knowing that Hashem created Nivroim, he created creation. But that, in absolute terms, it's like that creation is not even there. Exactly. So therefore what? There isn't such a thing as really deserving in the first place. So what happens then? What happens is that the understanding, the hakaras hatov that a person gets is absolutely immense, because he understands that he cannot deserve whatever it is that Hashem's given. I've had moments of feeling being with tzaddikim that I felt such closeness to Hashem. I felt, wow, I'm so sorry that I was upset by something which I thought should have upset me. Some really rough. I said, but look who you're dealing with. You're upset. You see, that you always have to look at yourself vis-a-vis that. If a person puts themselves, person has to always align themselves with the Baruch and see things kivyachol from both sides. If you do that, then a person won't have a problem with the idea of deserving. Right? In other words, if Hashem would decide in a second that there's no bria, there's no creation, there are no base Hafvaros to go to. There's nothing. Everything's kelohoyo, bichlal. You understand that you're talking, because when you talk about Hashem, you cannot help but talk in superlative terms. But we, as Nivraim, don't speak into superlative terms. We speak in relative terms, vis-a-vis another, me and another. So a Jew is always faced with this interface between him being a created being and Hashem being Ein Oid Milvadoi Efes Zulosoi.
It's Jews who say human beings.
I'm at this point I'm talking about Jews. At this point I'm talking about Jews. Hashem, I don't really know what the pshat isn't going. We'll have to see about that. Okay, so boishes, you're feeling embarrassment. Vav K. Vav K is where I can affect things. It's as the Rambam talks about. Rambam talks about a person does one mitzvah, he's done the whole world the chafs. The whole world, I don't care who it is, from the biggest rabbi. I've helped done the world the chafs by my good deed. The opposite, I've done the opposite for the whole world. Right? So, if a person looks at things like that, there's also a boishes here. But boishes is not just shame of like angels feel shame. That's what I'm trying to say. But they can never do anything wrong. It's because of the greatness of who a kadosh baruch Hu is. They cover themselves up like this, and they cover themselves up with these wings they cover here, and these wings they cover over here. That's what it is about standing in front of the king. That's what you feel. Okay, we have to go on here, otherwise I won't be able to finish this in time. Okay. Now, the last hay, as I said, the hay basra in Shem Hashem, is returning that hay to the Yud Kei Vav. That's what Hashem talks about, that until Amalek is destroyed, my name will not be complete, and you know. What do you mean, Yad al Kiskar? That his hand is on the chair of Hashem. Meaning that this aspect of being able to separate this world from a kadosh baruch Hu is an Amalekite tribute. Okay? That this world is this world, and he's up there and he rules up there, and this world is this world. That's already a bit of an Amalek. Understand? It's that serious. You see, so therefore, everyone has a bit of an Amalek in them. And the thing is that everybody has to try to link. Why do you think that many people, especially Hasidim and Kubalim, with every mitzvah they talk about Yachad, Shem, Yud, K, and Vav K? Because they're the ones with holding on to the Vav K, and they want to unify this name of Hashem through doing the mitzvah and making Hashem's name whole. Right? Right. Right. So now Hashem, we return to Yud K Vav, and the last Hey, which we have down here, it becomes Yud K Vav K. Okay, let's go weiter now.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What do you mean by making Hashem's name whole? You're not talking about the actual letters.
Mm-hmm. Right.
About something larger than
yes.
that?
In other words, I'm talking about what happens is that when you say Yud K Vav K, at our level, you're talking about that we down here still have a hashpah on what can go on in the higher worlds by our deeds. But when you talk about Yud K, you're not. You're saying now, in other words, that's one of the reasons we say when Mashiach comes, that's the only time we'll be able to say that name properly and say it out. Because we'll have passed the world of Onish, and we'll be going to the world of sahar, of reward. Understand? So it's just a matter of how you switch it and how you look at it. Of course, his name is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. He told that name to Adam and Rishon before he did anything. But the thing is, in Judaism, you always have the inyan of how am I supposed to look at something? How am I supposed to view it? So what I'm saying about this is that I'm supposed to view it, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, today, there's this Vav where I and my deeds can influence, as it were, what's going to happen in the higher realms. But there will come a time when that won't be possible anymore. Okay. When the tachlis of the Bria will have been accomplished. Hashem has a tochnit here. He has a whole thing that he wants to achieve. So I just want to take you through. I'll leave time for questions because I see people want to ask questions. I'll leave a bit of time, but I have to go through this so that you'll see exactly the whole circle of what I'm saying. Okay. And linked to that, we have what we say in Elul. Ani ledoidi v'doidi li. Hence, what I'm saying is what? First, I'm saying ani ledoidi. And then I'm saying doidi li. Right? I. So what does it look like when I say ani ledoidi v'doidi li? It looks like there is what we call in Kabbalah is arusa de la sato. That means awakening from below. Because I said ani ledoidi. And Hashem said back ledoidi. But then you have to go back again. When we started off with Tisha B'Av, and we said Hashivenu Hashem Elecha V'Tshuva, we asked him first to make the first move, and said, and then we'll return. And we said, but just a second, if you return us to you, we'll return anyway. So there's now I want you to listen carefully because this is a very difficult idea to explain. When we say venashuva, like somebody is saying, what choice do we have? Because anyway, you are returning us, you're pulling us to. The thing is this, when Hashem first created the Bria, there was only one type of his Horus, just from upstairs. It's Arusa de la Eila, right? He made the whole world that way. And they said, Adam Aila, Voides Adama, there's no man to work the field. Now there's no one to daven for these things. In other words, Hashem wants. You see, this is the funny thing about this Arusa de la Sata. Talking about his Horus from below. Hashem wants initiation to come from us. But he has to switch that button on in order for us to start to function. Yeah? That's why it's Hashivenu Hashem Elech V'Nashuva. Already we are going to start moving. We're going to start doing things. You see? So what does that mean we're going to start doing things? In other words, we are made so godlike that it looks like sometimes that we have a type of Arusa de la Eila of ourselves that makes things move in Shammai, which is true. But it's not, it was all instigated by him. It's almost like Arusa de la Eila causes Arusa de la Sata. And then it's from la Tata you get Arusa de la Eila, which transfers to Arusa de la, goes to Arusa de la Tata, which is really Arusa de la Eila from upstairs. That's how complicated it is. It goes round and round and round. It's very, very complicated. But if you halt cop, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. So, and it comes out, especially when we say the part that I haven't talked about, the second part of this talk, Hamelech Besade. Okay, why does he have to be in the field? Why not in his palace? Okay, so people say, yeah, well, in his palace, he's guarded, and there are all these people. Who are you? Where you come to see the king? Where you called up? This, all this type of thing. But a person can say, no, there are such things, and I grew up in this type of malchus, where people can see the king. I can say, I'm going to see the king today, with all his advisors, and the king is notified that Ploni Almoini has come. It's up to the Hashem when he's actually going to receive the person, but the person's there. What does going to the field help there? Why can't we say you just have in Elo a free access to the palace, and no one can stop you from speaking to the king? Right? Why do we have to shift scenes here? Because we have work to do. True. But why do we have to change the scene from the palace to the field?
Because there are walls in the field.
Exactly. There we go. That's exactly the vote. There are no walls in the field. You see, no. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Because that's exactly why the Gemara also explains. That's why when Hashem spoke to Yaakov Avinu and told him it's time to go back to Eretz Yisrael, what did he do? He took his wives and everything, he took them to the field and explained, like, that your father, I've treated him, I've done this for him, this, and you see the way he's looking at me now, that things are not like they used to be. And they say, yes, we know, and plus how, it's not very nice of him. He actually sold his own daughters, you had to pay for us, and all this type of stuff, But there is, when the field, there's no walls. But let's make this more, let's make this more palatable. Let's make this more understandable. Okay. Let's say, like, we're familiar with people that seemingly seem to run the world and world affairs and how the world ways that countries are run, which countries fall, which countries rise, which this and this. So you have all these big machas, right? Two big machas that don't want a certain, let's say, South American country. They don't want this certain person who's getting very, very popular, and they don't like his politics, and they don't want him around. But he's got lots of supporters. And now they're thinking of what they're going to do about it. So look at the scene. Where do they speak? These very, very important people. They don't speak in concealed places. Like you see, like in these fancy movies of people who run the world, they don't speak in open places. Let's say they're speaking by a fish pond or duck pond. So one guy has got some bread and he's throwing crumbs to the ducks. And another guy sitting a bit further has got his fishing rod. And a person looking from the outside doesn't see there's any connection between them. Meanwhile, they're saying, so the one who's throwing says, there's this country and this person's giving us a lot of problems. And, meanwhile, he's feeding the ducks. And we need to find a plan. Who do you think we can send over there to kind of remove this person out of office and put so and so? And this other guy who's fishing, getting a fish, I think that so and so could be a good candidate, but he doesn't really have enough support. And the other one says, well, in a neighboring country, there are people that will support him in a national. Then they say, okay, we'll do that. But a person who's looking from the outside sees no connection. So-and-so was simply feeding the ducks. And the other guy was fishing. Why is this analogy of the field so important? Even in the Gemara, it talks about it. When the Chachamim, sorry, not in the Gemara, in Kabbalah, in the Zohar, when the Chachamim was speaking deep secrets of Torah that they did not want the other side to hear. You see, if you go to, let's say you get all the world leaders conglomerating in one place, everybody knows that there's big stuff going on. Right? But not when one has gone fishing and the other has gone swimming, then you're not aware, because it's part of the way Hashem has made things. And that's also why things like sneers and anovo are such important things. Because it means like, there's nothing going on over here. I mean, what does he do? It's just, who is he? I mean, nobody. But if he speaks with a loud voice and says, well, I'm the boss, and so, oh, well, you're the boss, okay. So now we're on your case to see whether you're really the boss. So Hashem, when we say that Machusa, Derakia, Ke'en Machusa Da'ara, it's not just the way, it's talking about the way that the world works. It's the same way it works up there. It works on the same type of tricks, the same type of maneuverings. Everyone wants to get the good lawyer and not the lousy lawyer, even though he knows that he's right. Right? So what you have, Melech Besade. So what does the other side think? Melech Besade, okay, he's going for a tiyul, why not? He's in his gardens. Allowed to do that. Who says that he's dafka coming for a private conversation with his children? He's making himself accessible to them. And they can speak to him frankly about their situation, where they find themselves. So we can speak to Hashem and nobody knows what's going on. That is the point. That's why the Sada is so important. The Clippers shouldn't hear about this. They're used to bam, 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 bam. They're used to all of that. Once there's a big party, oh, okay. Even because I'll say that's why the first Luchois didn't work out so well. Why? Because there was lightning, there was koil shofar, boo. So why not? Everyone knows about it. But once things are getting quietly, people say, well, so what this is that it's working your way now. Hamelech, things Hamelech means he has the koach. One thing about Malchus, you have to know, stands about the strength to be able to get things done. That's Malchus. If a person does not have koach, then by the definition he's not a melech. Right? Like you can't call the king of Israel of Britain a melech. He doesn't have koach. Nice hat, nice crown, nice gown. But what can you actually do? The Maisa, zero. So that's a melech? No. You see, where I come from, I'll show you just to give you a point, just to share it, make it closer to you so you understand what I'm talking about. There was once a fancy school that the king wanted to be erected in Swaziland called Waterford High School. Or the people were thinking about it. And the princes were arguing that, well, it's an elitist school and not everyone's going to be accepted. And they wanted an egalitarian society. You don't want those that are way up there with a fancy education and those that are way down there, The king heard this way, that way. And then all of a sudden he said, the school's name is going to be Gamchab. All of a sudden, all those huge arguments that took place stopped. Why? Because the king had spoken already. Because the king had already spoken. Once he said his word, one thing in Judaism, we say that we talk about Malchus Peh. That's how Hashem created the world. The Malchus of his mouth. He spoke and things were. You don't say, well, Hashem, you want to bring a world, then you've got to bring all the guys, the contractors, and you've got to bring the guys with the cement, and then you've got to bring these, and you've got to, no, it doesn't work like that. Right? So, now I think we have a chance of understanding why Lashon Hara is such a serious affair. Because we have the koach of Dibur, and Dibur is the same as the letters of Davar. It's the same thing you create. In Zohar, they're very makpid on people who speak Lashon Hara. It says a person speaks Lashon Hara, Malach takes it up in Shabbat. Hashem, what will be with this word? So-and-so said this and this. What's going to be? Is this true? What are we going to do with it? And people think, who cares about what I say? I just said something, Even today, even from people, they think, who cares about what I really say? Who really cares about? That's not true. We are Bnei Melachim with the koach of the word, So Elul, what we have here is that Melech Besade means that Hashem has heard us. When we said, Hashivenu Hashem Elecha, you bring us to you. Venashuva. So what has Hashem done? He's in the field. He says, I've heard you. You screamed out in Tisha B'Av. You said, Hashivenu Hashem Elecha Venashuva. I'm here now. So what do you want to say? So, when the king is in the field, you have boishes on the side of the Makablim. Because everyone knows that whatever you ask a king for, it's really smallest of the small compared to what his abilities are. So, what you have is that in Elul, you have a hisnoitzetzus, what do you call that in English? A spark of venashuva that we said. Remember, I said that even a type of isarusa de la sato is really a type of isarusa de la ela too, because we are now prompting Hashem saying venashuva. You can listen, Hashivenu Hashem Alecha. And that's it. No. In other words, Hashem had the Venashuva. That's already a sparkling of Venashuva in Elul. Elul's ma. Hashivenu Hashem Alecha Venashuva. Right? So what we've done is we've come full circle in the promise made by the Jewish people to Allah. The Jewish people said, Hashem, if you return us to you, we will return. So the king is in the field. What caused him to come out to the field we've already talked about. So you have to understand that this method of dealing is not just fancy foot moves. It's the way of dealing with the Sitra Achra. You always have to make the Sitra Achra think that you're not dealing in its territory. Because once it gets a smell of that you're dealing in its stuff, it immediately gets on your case. Right? That's what all these tricks are about. The Baal Shem Tov talks about if a person's Yetzer Hara is very strong, they can't resist it. So what does he do? He says, okay, we said it, but let me just finish this bit of Gemara I'm learning right now, and then we'll see about what you say. But I'm in the middle of this Gemara. Let me just get to the two dots here and see. Says, okay, you've got to the two. Yes, but there's a Rashi here, you see, that explains exactly what the Gemara is talking about. So I need to look at that Rashi. Just a few lines, just a bit of patience. So I look at the few lines. And then all of a sudden I say, so okay, now we get, yes, but look, the Tosfos doesn't agree with Rashi, does he? You see, there's a Tosfos, oh man, this guy's never, Because you see, the whole thing is this: the Yetzer comes with galim. He comes with tokef v'gal. The thing is lishbor et hagalas, to break that gal. Once you survive that attack, you're on safe ground. And the thing is, the Baal Shem Tov also, you have to find ways and mitachbulot. He talks about tachbulot, tricks. Just like you, like he has tricks, you have to also find tricks. Oh no, now I have to go to this lady's meeting and I haven't been there. No, now I have this and this, and I've got this and this. By that time, he's already tired and okay, so he's missed his opportunity. So that's so.
Can I ask you a question?
Huh?
A question. Are you saying that Hashem's coming out to the field is Hashem's response to our saying Hashemah?
Exactly.
So he said it's like
exactly.
like
he's saying now.
I'm saying bring us to you, but he said
Yeah.
no, I'll come to you.
No, he says, in other words, he said we say Hashivenu elech benashu, and we by saying nashuva. That's why I use the words of Isarusa de la Eila in Isarusa de la Sat. In other words,
kind of like we're saying bring us to you. And he's saying, no, I'm not going to bring you to me. That's up to you.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
But I'll come out.
And that way, exactly. Oh, very good. Wow. Kol hakavod.
I want to make sure I'm.
Kol hakavod. So, that is basically the talk. The talk is basically that we now find ourselves in a situation where we're approaching the Yomim Noraim. So these days, obviously, the Sitra also knows that. So what happens if a person's got a very important case that's pending, that has to be dealt with? There is the prosecutors and there are the defense lawyers. The prosecutors come now. I think they come up with paperwork this high. So, okay, we're going to get these guys on the move. And they look through the paperwork. And then the other side, the judge says, well, we already dealt with this. This was Besade. We talked to him privately. You see. Like Lavan thought, remember what we say about Lavan? Arami Oived Avi. He wanted to destroy the Jewish people. But Hashem already got his way through the Sunday that he's going to get him out of the house of Lavan. He already worked it out. So it's not going to work. So therefore, there's the prosecution, going through his paperwork. Says, no, I'm sorry, but all of this has been dealt with and is totally irrelevant to the case in hand. That's why these days of preparation towards Rosh Hashanah are so important. So that he has very little to put in front of the Kodesh Baruch Hu at the end of the day. He says, no, we already told this thing has been dealt with and, it's null and void. And so therefore, Bezras Hashem was Zoche to another year. Bezras Hashem and Bezras Hashem to be as a Mashiach Tzidkenu. And we go weiter. So, thank you very much. Kol hakavod for clapping, it wasn't so posh. Kol hakavod. It was so posh.
There's a few minutes for questions if anybody would like.
Just a second, I need to go to the bathroom and I'll take questions.
It's because I don't understand.
You express it. Yeah, just really what the person who really learned. I kind of know what you learn best when you're explaining it to somebody else.
We say, okay. take us, bring us to you, and when we're here, and if you bring us here, then what's there for us to do? Then what's there for me? So Hashem said, no, I won't bring you to me. That's your responsibility to come to me. But I'll make myself more simple. I'll come out so that you can find me. I was so cute. I was trying to do right now. I was so cute. I throw it He said, well, he said,